The roaring engines of the B-17 Flying Fortress echoed through the cold sky over Nazi-occupied Europe. It was March 9th, 1944, and the 8th Air Force had launched another bombing mission deep into enemy territory. The B-17, known as Lucky Lass, was part of the second wave, high above the clouds, surrounded by a tight box formation of Allied bombers. Aboard her were 10 young men, each hardened by war, bonded by fire, and burdened by memories they'd never speak of once they returned, if they returned. On this mission, the crew was headed for Berlin, tasked with hitting a critical aircraft assembly plant. They knew the flak would be thick, and the German fighters even thicker. But what no one expected was that, in the middle of a dogfight for their lives, a personal feud between two crew members would boil over, leading to a violent fistfight right there in the belly of the bomber, as death screamed by outside the windows. The crew of the Lucky Lass had flown together for over 16 missions, and the pressure had taken its toll. Staff Sergeant Ray Tex Hollister, the waist gunner from Texas, had a short fuse and a long memory. Opposite him was Corporal Danny Price, the radio operator, originally from Brooklyn, New York. From their very first mission, Tex and Danny had rubbed each other the wrong way. Tex thought Danny was a loudmouth city slicker who didn't take anything seriously. Danny thought Tex was a hot-headed redneck who barked orders like he owned the plane. Their bickering had become the background noise of every flight, until the mission over Bremen, when a heated argument nearly got physical. The captain, John Leland, had to threaten them both with court-martial if it ever happened again. But tension doesn't vanish in the clouds. It brews, compresses, and waits for the perfect storm. That storm arrived over Germany. They had just crossed into enemy airspace when the flak bursts began to the sky like black flowers. Each explosion rocked the fuselage, the metal hull groaning under the pressure. The crew was at their stations, helmets on, oxygen flowing through their masks. Tex manned the starboard waist gun. Danny sat at his radio, adjusting frequencies to catch any enemy chatter. But it wasn't the Luftwaffe or the flak that ignited the chaos. It was a misunderstanding. A moment of poor judgment in a war zone where every second counts. The intercom system began to malfunction, cutting in and out, making communication impossible. Tex believed he saw enemy fighters closing in from the rear, coming in low. He shouted for Danny to relay the sighting to the captain. Danny, busy trying to fix the frequency, didn't respond fast enough. Tex screamed again, voice rising in panic and rage. "Danny, you deaf son of a Coladian." Danny spun around, slammed his fist on the wall near the intercom panel, and yelled back, "I'm trying, Tex. Back off." To Tex, that sounded like defiance. And defiance, in the heat of battle, felt like betrayal. The plane shook violently. Two Mi-109s ripped past them, strafing the fuselage with machine gun fire. Holes punched into the side of the aircraft, and one of the left gunners, Joe Stanson, screamed that his leg had been hit. Amid the chaos, Tex charged from his gunner's position down the narrow corridor to Danny's station. The oxygen tube stretched with him as far as it could before snapping free. Tex didn't care. His eyes were red with fury. Danny stood, chest puffed, ready. "Don't even think about it," he growled. Tex lunged. What happened next was a scene straight out of Madness. As enemy fire pounded the bomber and other crew members shouted frantically for support, Tex and Danny traded brutal punches inside the plane. Helmets cracked, noses bled, fists slammed into ribs. The other gunners and the bombardier yelled over the intercom for them to stop, but no one could intervene. Everyone else was strapped in, fighting for their lives as German fighters encircled the bomber group like sharks. Meanwhile, the captain, John Leland, had his hands full in the cockpit. Two Messerschmitts were tailing them, and his co-pilot, Terry Nolan, was struggling to keep altitude. Through the chaos, John heard bits of what was happening in the back. A garbled report from the tail gunner about a brawl mid-fuselage. He couldn't believe it. A fight? Now. He radioed back, voice cutting through static. Tex, Danny, I swear to God, if you don't end this now, I'll have you both court-martialed and thrown out the hatch. No response. At that moment, a 20mm shell tore through the port wing. Smoke began pouring into the cabin. The hydraulic systems blinked red. The lucky lass was in serious trouble. It was then that Joe, bleeding from his leg, made the ultimate decision. He unstrapped himself from the turret and crawled, with a bloodied pant leg, through the bomb bay doors toward the fighting pair. He reached them just as Tex shoved Danny against the wall. Joe, with what strength he had left, grabbed Tex's shoulder and screamed, "We're all going to die if you don't get back to your station." Something in Tex's face changed. Maybe it was the blood on Joe's uniform. Or maybe it was the sudden, blinding clarity that this wasn't a bar in Texas. This was war. Tex let go. Danny stumbled forward, gasping. No words were exchanged. Just a nod. Tex rushed back to his station, reconnected his oxygen, and manned the gun just in time to catch a German fighter peeling off from their six. His shots rang true, lighting up the sky. Danny, now at his radio, managed to fix the frequency and call in their damage status. They were hit hard but still flying. The rest of the mission was a blur of fire, smoke, and narrow escapes. The lucky lass lost altitude, but she stayed with the formation. Somehow, through sheer will and teamwork, they dropped their bombs and made the long flight home. They were the last plane to land at their airfield in England, the runway lined with medics and mechanics. Joe was rushed to the infirmary, his leg a mess but salvageable. Later that night, as the crew sat in the debriefing room, silence hung over them like smoke. The mission had been brutal. 3 bombers lost, 2 confirmed kills by lucky lass's gunners. But the elephant in the room remained, the fight. Captain Leland stood at the front, arms crossed. "You both disgraced the uniform today," he said to Tex and Danny. "But somehow you also helped save this plane." He paused. "I should report you both. I should ground you. But this war," he looked around at the others, "this war is a madness, and you're still alive. So maybe today we let it go." Tex and Danny didn't speak. But days later, when the next mission came, they sat next to each other on the tarmac. Danny handed Tex a fresh oxygen mask, already prepped. Tex nodded and passed him a chocolate bar from his rations. They flew together again, this time with a strange new bond forged not by friendship, but by survival. Back in the States, decades after the war, the story of the mid-air brawl became a kind of legend among veterans. A tale told in bars, in hushed voices over drinks, usually ending in a laugh or a shake of the head. But for Tex and Danny, it was more than a story. It was a reminder of how close men can come to killing each other when everything outside is trying to kill them first. Neither man ever spoke much about the war after they returned. Tex opened a mechanic shop in Dallas. Danny ran a radio repair business in New York. But every year, like clockwork, Tex would receive a holiday card postmarked from Brooklyn. Inside, without fail, would be a stick of chewing gum and one simple line: "Next time, throw your left first. Danny." And every year, Tex would laugh and reply, "Only if you promise to duck faster." Theirs wasn't a friendship of sentiment. It was built in the sky, written in blood, and sealed in a moment of madness no one else could understand.